The untouchable houseplant. How the Sansevieria survives anything, and so can you. Hello, dear friends of Earthly Delights. Welcome back. Or if you're new here, I'm truly glad you found your way. If you're the kind of person who stops in awe at a fresh new leaf, if your idea of peace is a quiet morning with your plants, or if you've recently stood in front of a nursery shelf wondering, can I really take care of this one? Then you, my friend, are in the right place. You're likely someone who wants more than just pretty decor. You're looking for connection, calm, and the quiet confidence that comes from watching something thrive under your care. Maybe you're working with a small apartment balcony or a cozy windowsill. Maybe you're trying to build a green sanctuary in a world that moves too fast. Or maybe, like so many of us, you just need something alive and grounded to remind you that you are. 2. Today, I want to introduce you to a plant that's more than just hardy, it's practically unkillable. A plant that survives the forgetful waterer, the dark corner, the winter radiator, and even the heat wave. It's the ultimate beginner's blessing, and a seasoned grower's secret weapon. That plant is the mighty Sansevieria, better known as the snake plant. And by the end of this journey, you'll not only know how to care for it, you might just see yourself in it. So if you're ready to discover how one of the toughest houseplants on earth can help you build your own green confidence, stick around. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Earthly Delights so you never miss another moment of growth, beauty, and grounded living. 1. Choosing your plant, more than just leaves. Let's begin where every plant journey truly starts, not with soil, not with sunlight, but with a choice. Picture yourself walking through the greenhouse or scrolling an online nursery page. Dozens of pots lined up, all with stiff, upright leaves painted in hues of green, gold, and gray. You pause at a group of snake plants, tall, structured, and quietly powerful. But in that moment, it's not just about picking a plant. It's about choosing energy, a presence, a companion that will live in your space, share your light, and whisper resilience without ever making a sound. The Sansevieria, sometimes called mother-in-law's tongue, sometimes snake plant, sometimes just that cool plant I haven't managed to kill, is one of the most forgiving plants on the planet. But don't let that fool you into thinking they're all the same. Because each variety tells its own story. There's the Longterm, with its golden yellow edges and sword-like leaves. It's bold and eye-catching, perfect for those who want structure and contrast. Then there's Zeylanica, darker and more subtle, like a forest floor. It blends in but never disappears. For those who prefer something softer, more compact, there's Kirki, with its wavy, sculptural form. And finally, the minimalist's dream, Mikado or Bacularis, with its upright, cylindrical leaves that almost look like bamboo spears rising from the soil. Each one is different, but they all share one extraordinary trait: quiet endurance. A kind of strength that doesn't need praise to prove it's there. And if you've ever had a week when the dishes piled up, your to-do list got the best of you, and the only thing you managed to water was your coffee, then this is the plant for you. It won't judge, it won't wilt, it just waits, grows, endures. That's why choosing your snake plant isn't just about aesthetics. It's about alignment. Which version of resilience do you need in your life right now? In a moment, we'll talk about what to look for when picking a healthy specimen. But first, pause and ask yourself, are you drawn to the bold or the subtle? The structured or the wild? Trust your instinct, because the right plant always has a way of choosing you. 2. What to check before you buy. Now that you've felt that spark, that quiet connection between you and a certain Sansevieria, it's time to get a little practical. Choosing the right type is one thing, but choosing the right plant, that's where your journey as a mindful grower truly begins. Because not all snake plants at the nursery are created equal, and while this species is famously tough, bringing home a plant that's already struggling is like starting a race with a twisted ankle. So let's slow down, take a closer look, let your eyes and hands learn to read the silent signals. Start with the leaves. Are they standing tall, like they know who they are? Or are they drooping, curling, or leaning awkwardly? A healthy Sansevieria holds itself with quiet pride, strong, upright, and steady. Then, run your fingers gently over the surface. You should feel a firm, waxy cuticle, that natural armor that helps the plant hold moisture and defend against pests. If it feels soft, thin, or dry to the touch, that could be a red flag. A weak cuticle is like a cracked shield. The plant may have been stressed, overwatered, or exposed to harsh light. Look closer. Are there black spots on the leaves? Those aren't freckles, they're signs of possible fungus, bacterial infection, or even rot beginning beneath the surface. Even if the rest of the plant looks okay, that kind of damage can spread. It's not worth the risk. Now glance at the soil. Is it bone dry or swampy wet? A well-cared for snake plant will usually be sitting in dry or just slightly moist soil. If the pot feels waterlogged, walk away. One of the most heartening signs you can spot is new growth, those tiny baby leaves pushing up from the soil like hopeful green spears. When a plant is sending out new shoots, it's telling you, I'm ready to grow. I'm happy here. That's exactly the kind of energy you want to bring home. And here's a tip that might surprise you. Resist the urge to choose the one in bloom. Yes, snake plants do flower on occasion, but it's rare, and when it happens, it often means the plant is pouring all its energy into reproduction, leaving the rest of it a little depleted. It's like meeting someone on a really flashy day. They might look impressive now, but it's not always sustainable. So instead, choose the one that looks quietly strong, vibrant, upright, with firm leaves and maybe a few hidden surprises sprouting beneath the soil. Because when you choose a healthy Sansevieria, you're setting the stage for success. You're telling yourself, I'm not just adding decoration, I'm inviting life. 3. The truth about repotting. So, you've made your choice. You're holding that perfect Sansevieria in your hands, and you're already imagining where it will sit, maybe by your desk, your bedside table, or nestled on a sunny shelf. But now comes the part where most eager plant lovers make a critical mistake: rushing to repot. It's understandable. You want your new plant to feel at home. You want to give it a beautiful pot, maybe one that matches your decor, or that ceramic number you've had waiting for a new green tenant. But here's something that might surprise you. Don't repot it just yet. Yes, you heard that right. The best thing you can do for your Sansevieria in its early days is actually nothing. These plants are slow rooting. Their underground systems take time to establish, and when they're moved too soon, they can fall apart, literally. What looks like a tight, sturdy base might crumble in your hands if disturbed before it's ready. And that's not the kind of welcome you want to give your new green friend. Instead, think of this period as a quiet settling in time. Like when we move into a new home, we need a few weeks to adjust, to breathe, to understand the light, the rhythm, the silence of a space. Your Sansevieria is no different. Keeping it in its original nursery pot for a few months, or even up to a year, is perfectly fine. In fact, it's wise. These plants actually like to be a little root-bound. When the roots hug the pot, when they start to gently push against the sides, it mimics the dry, rocky soils of their native environments. This snug fit doesn't stress them, it strengthens them. Later on, when you do repot, go just one pot size up. Not 2, not 3. A pot that's too big will hold too much moisture. And moisture is the silent enemy of this plant. With too much soil staying too wet for too long, the roots won't breathe, and rot will begin to creep in. But there's something magical about repotting at the right time. When done right, a slightly larger pot gives your Sansevieria space to stretch. It encourages the plant to send out rhizomes, those underground runners that sprout new leaves, and before you know it, your one plant becomes a lush cluster, a mini forest of spears, slowly multiplying in your care. And as your plant fills its new space, so will your confidence as a grower. That's what we're building here, not just plant knowledge, but trust in yourself. Because if you can be patient, observant, and gentle with your Sansevieria, maybe you can offer the same care to yourself. 4. Pot and soil secrets, where roots breathe easy. Now that your Sansevieria has arrived home and is taking time to settle in its original pot, you might be wondering, when the time comes, what kind of pot should I choose? And just as important, what kind of soil will help it thrive? Here's the truth. While the leaves get all the attention, the structure, the stripes, the glow in the morning light, it's what's happening below the surface that decides whether your plant survives or thrives. Start with the pot. It's more than a container. It's the foundation for everything. If you're someone who tends to overwater, or just wants a little extra peace of mind, terracotta may be your best friend. These porous clay pots breathe. They allow moisture to escape naturally, helping to prevent that dreaded soggy soil. In a way, they mimic the dry, well-draining ground that Sansevierias are used to in their native African landscapes. But maybe your style leans more modern. Sleek ceramics or minimalist plastic pots work too, as long as there's one non-negotiable: drainage holes. No matter how beautiful a pot is, if it doesn't let water out, you're setting your plant up for trouble. Imagine being stuck in wet shoes all week. That's how your plant feels when it's sitting in waterlogged soil. Here's a simple trick I use. Keep your Sansevieria in the nursery pot it came in, yes, that basic plastic one, and just place it inside a prettier outer pot. This way, you can always lift it out, check if water's collecting at the bottom, and pour it out before damage sets in. It's like giving your plant an apartment with a great drainage system and full visibility. Now, let's talk soil. The Sansevieria is not your typical houseplant. It doesn't want a dense, moisture-holding mix. What it really craves is freedom. Freedom to drain fast, to dry out, to breathe. That means a soil mix that's gritty, airy, and loose. If you're buying pre-made soil, look for cactus or succulent blends. They're made for plants that like it dry. Want to make your own? Try combining standard potting soil with perlite, pumice, or coarse sand. The goal is simple. Water should pass through quickly, leaving just enough moisture behind for the roots to absorb, but not drown in. Now for a little-known secret: Sansevierias can thrive in pumice alone. Yes, pure pumice. It's light, volcanic, and naturally aerating. It holds a bit of moisture and air at the same time, perfect for roots that hate being soaked. If you're someone who travels often or tends to forget to water, this might be a dream setup for you and your plant. And what about self-watering pots? That might sound like a nightmare for a drought-loving plant like this, but with the right soil mix, it can actually work. You'll just need to make sure the mix drains really well, no moisture-retentive peat moss. That way, the plant only sips what it needs, and the rest keeps moving down into the reservoir. When the pot and soil are right, your Sansevieria feels secure. Its roots stretch deep without fear. Its leaves stand tall with energy. And as the plant anchors into place, something else anchors too: your confidence. You start to feel a little more rooted in your role as a plant caregiver. Not perfect, not rushed, just in tune. And once the roots are happy, it's time to think about placement. Because while Sansevierias are famously flexible, where you place them can mean the difference between slow survival and radiant growth. 5. Where to place your plant. Light isn't optional. Now that your Sansevieria is resting in the right soil and pot, there's one final decision that could shape the entire future of your plant, and it has nothing to do with watering, fertilizer, or fancy tools. It's where you choose to place it. Here's where things get a little misunderstood. You've probably heard it before: snake plants can grow in the dark. It's the line every plant shop says, and every beginner repeats. And yes, technically, Sansevierias can survive in low light. But let me ask you something. Do you want your plant to survive, or do you want it to thrive? Because while this plant is one of the best when it comes to tolerating neglect, darkness isn't a friend, it's just something it knows how to endure. If you place your Sansevieria in a dark hallway, a shadowy corner, or a windowless bathroom, it will stand there for weeks, months, even years. But quietly, invisibly, it will start to fade. Not overnight, and not dramatically, but slowly, like a candle burning low. The colors will pale, the growth will stall, and eventually, its energy will begin to wither without ever asking for help. Now picture the opposite: a room with bright, indirect light, maybe a north-facing window or a spot near filtered sunlight. You set your plant there, and something subtle changes. The leaves seem to sharpen. A new shoot begins to push through the soil. And without saying a word, your Sansevieria tells you, thank you. It's not that the sun makes it flashy, it's not a show-off kind of plant. But with light, it comes alive. It grows fuller, faster, and stronger. Even if the growth is slow and steady, you'll know it's active, not just existing, but expanding. And here's something beautiful: this plant doesn't need the spotlight. In fact, Placing it in intense direct sun, like a south-facing windowsill where light blazes all day, can be too harsh. That strong, waxy cuticle that protects the leaves can begin to thin out under too much sun, leading to faded color or even burns. It's a little like us, we need warmth and clarity, but not pressure that overwhelms. So, what's the sweet spot? Think. Bright but soft. Filtered light through a curtain. Morning sun that fades by noon. The kind of light that energizes rather than exhausts. And yes, your Sansevieria can still sit in rooms with less light, but if that's the case, give it a rotation, a seasonal vacation closer to the window. Let it stretch and recharge. And here's a thoughtful tip, not just practical, but purposeful. Try placing your Sansevieria in the bedroom. Unlike most plants, it releases oxygen at night. While you sleep, it works. It filters the air quietly, supporting your rest without asking for anything in return. It's like having a silent guardian in the corner, breathing peace into the room. So whether it's near your desk, by your front door, or watching over you as you dream, choose a spot that offers light and intention. When a plant is placed where it can receive what it needs, it becomes more than decor. It becomes a presence. Coming up next, we'll talk about the rhythm of care, watering, wiping, and watching for signs of distress. Because understanding how to respond to your Sansevieria's needs is where the true magic of plant connection begins. 6. Your Sansevieria's daily life, water, air and patience. Caring for a Sansevieria is not about daily tasks or constant attention. It's about rhythm, trust, and learning to pause. In a world where everything demands your energy, notifications, deadlines, to-do lists, this plant asks for almost nothing. And yet, when you learn to care for it properly, it quietly rewards you with beauty, strength, and presence, like a friend who doesn't speak often, but always shows up when you need them. Let's talk about watering. This is where many plant lovers, especially the enthusiastic ones, get tripped up. Because most houseplants like a regular watering routine. But the Sansevieria? It thrives on restraint. Think of its thick, upright leaves as water tanks, each one storing moisture deep inside. Preparing for droughts. That means the number one rule is simple. Don't water until the soil is bone dry. Not slightly dry, not kinda dry, completely dry, depending on your environment. That could mean watering only once every 3 to 4 weeks. In winter, maybe just once a month. And yes, your instincts might scream, but it looks thirsty. That's your generosity talking, but trust the plant. If its leaves are firm and upright, it's content. If you water too often, its roots will sit in moisture they don't want, and that's when problems begin. Too much water is the silent killer. It creeps in gently, no drama, no immediate signs, but over time, black spots may appear. Leaves may soften, the base may turn mushy, and when that happens, it's a sign the roots are suffocating. The life below the surface is drowning in kindness. But here's the good news, your Sansevieria is a fighter. Even if you overwater once or twice, it can recover. Let the soil dry out completely, trim any damaged leaves, and give it space to heal. Now, beyond watering, there's one simple ritual I love. Once a month, take a damp microfiber cloth and gently wipe down the leaves. Not just for cleanliness, but for connection. Dust, residue, even subtle pests can dull its shine. But more than that, it's a chance for you to slow down. To notice, to touch each leaf with care and say, I see you. This tiny habit deepens your relationship with your plant, and with yourself. As for air, Sansevierias aren't picky. Dry winters, humid summers, they adjust. But like us, they don't love extremes. Try to avoid placing them near drafty windows or under blasting heaters. If you sense a strong draft or overly dry air, consider moving them slightly or misting the area lightly, not for the plant's sake alone, but to soften the space around it. Remember, this plant has evolved to survive in harsh conditions. It doesn't need pampering. What it thrives on is consistency, awareness, and your quiet presence. So as you walk past it each day, heading to the kitchen, sitting down to work, curling up with a book, take a second to check in. Not with urgency, but with calm attention. Because the Sansevieria doesn't demand much, but it teaches volumes. About patience, about holding your ground, about knowing when to act, and when to simply let things be. And that brings us to an important truth: sometimes, despite our best efforts, things still go wrong. In the next part, we'll talk about how to spot the signs before problems grow, because knowing what to look for can turn a setback into a lesson. 7. When things go wrong, spotting trouble before it spreads. Even with the gentlest hands and the best intentions, problems sometimes find their way in. And if you've ever looked at your Sansevieria one morning and thought, "Was that there yesterday?" You're not alone. The truth is, most plant issues don't happen overnight. They whisper before they shout. They begin as a small spot, a soft patch, a faded edge, and the more familiar you become with your plant, the earlier you'll hear those whispers. One of the first red flags is black spots on the leaves. They might appear in the middle, at the tips, or along the edges. These aren't just cosmetic blemishes. They're usually signs of a deeper issue: fungus or bacteria taking advantage of excess moisture. Overwatering, poor drainage, or humidity trapped in the wrong place can open the door. But don't panic. If you catch it early, it's easy to manage. Start by trimming off any affected leaves, right down to the base. Not halfway, not just the tip. Removing the entire leaf stops the problem from spreading and gives your plant a clean slate to rebuild from. Think of it like pruning emotional baggage from your life. It may feel like a loss at first, but what comes after is healing. Next, let the plant completely dry out. That means giving the roots time to reset, to shake off the excess and breathe again. Remember, Sansevieria roots are survivors, but they need air just as much as water. Now, if you notice a leaf becoming soft, wet, or mushy, especially at the base, it could mean root rot has set in. This often happens when the pot doesn't drain properly, or when standing water lingers in the saucer beneath. Here's what to do. Gently pull out the entire affected leaf, roots and all. Don't try to save part of it. Just let it go. Then check the surrounding soil. If it smells musty, or if other roots look dark and slimy, you may need to replace the entire mix. But here's the silver lining: Sansevierias are made to regenerate. Even if you remove half the plant, what remains can regrow, rebalance, and restore itself over time. The key is giving it the right environment to do so. And what about pests? While rare, they can show up, especially if your plant has been stressed by poor light or too much moisture. Mealybugs are the most common culprits: tiny, cottony clusters that hide in the creases of leaves. If you see them, don't panic. Wipe them off gently. You can use a mix of water and mild soap, or a natural pesticide if needed. Just be gentle, be consistent. But here's the beautiful truth: 9 times out of 10, when something goes wrong with a Sansevieria, it comes back to just one thing: too much water. This isn't a needy plant. It doesn't ask for much. So when we overdo it, when we pour our stress, our worry, our overcare into the pot, it shows. And yet, this plant forgives. With time, light, and dry soil, it returns to center, just like we can. 8. Fertilizer and feeding. Less is still more. If watering is the heartbeat of plant care, then feeding is the breath. It doesn't happen every moment, but when done right, it gives life. Still, with Sansevieria, more isn't always better. It's about balance. You see, the Sansevieria is a minimalist at heart. It doesn't crave rich, heavy meals. It doesn't need weekly feeding schedules or complex nutrient blends. In fact, too much fertilizer can do more harm than good, burning the roots, discoloring the leaves, and disturbing the slow, steady rhythm this plant thrives in. So how often should you feed it? Think of it seasonally. Twice, maybe 3 times a year is plenty. Once in the spring, again in midsummer, and perhaps a light touch as autumn begins. These are the plant's natural periods of growth, the times it responds to longer days and warmer air. That's when a gentle nudge of nutrients can make all the difference. And what kind of fertilizer? Keep it simple. A balanced, all-purpose houseplant fertilizer works just fine. Liquid is easy to control, just dilute it more than the label suggests. Because here's the thing: when it comes to feeding Sansevieria, it's better to underfeed than overdo it. A little extra water? It might recover. But too much fertilizer? The damage can be slow and lasting. One of the first signs you've gone too far is burn marks on the leaves, especially the tips and edges. These look like dry, brown scars, and they're not just from the sun. They often mean salt buildup in the soil, something that happens when fertilizer accumulates faster than the plant can absorb it. So if you've been generous with feeding and suddenly notice dry tips, pause. Flush the soil with clean water and skip the fertilizer for a cycle or two. Let your plant reset. This plant, remember, was built for scarcity. In the wild, it survives in poor, sandy soils, thriving not because of what it has, but because of how well it uses what little it's given. And in that way, it teaches us something: how to live well with less, how to avoid the urge to overdo, overgive, overfix, how to trust that a gentle touch, applied with intention, can be more nourishing than any grand effort. Fertilizing isn't about forcing growth. It's about offering support, quietly, seasonally, and just enough. 9. Pests and protections, a living armor. By now, you've probably realized that the Sansevieria isn't just another houseplant. It's a quiet warrior. One that stands tall through heat, drought, neglect, and remarkably, even pests. While many indoor plants fall victim to tiny invaders, aphids nibbling at new growth, mites spinning invisible webs, your Sansevieria holds its ground. Why? It all comes down to its incredible natural armor, that thick, waxy cuticle coating each leaf. It's not just for looks. It's a living shield. Most pests simply can't get through it. It's too tough, too sealed, too unappetizing. That's why, in most homes, you'll rarely, if ever, see your snake plant under attack. It just doesn't give pests a reason to stay. But like anything in nature, nothing is absolute. If a Sansevieria has been stressed, maybe from too much water, poor light, or shock from a recent move, its defenses can weaken. And when that happens, you might see signs. The most common? Mealybugs. They look like tiny bits of white cotton, hiding at the base of the leaves or in the folds where one leaf meets another. They move slowly, and they feed by sucking sap from the plant. But don't worry, if you catch them early, they're easy to handle. A cotton swab dipped in rubbing alcohol can remove them gently. For larger outbreaks, a spray of mild soapy water or neem oil can work wonders. And then there are spider mites. Though they're far less common with Sansevieria, these tiny red or yellowish pests tend to appear in very dry environments. You might notice fine webbing between leaves, or speckled patterns as they feed. A quick rinse of the plant or a gentle insecticidal soap usually clears them up. But here's something important: pests are usually a symptom, not the root problem. If they appear, ask yourself, is the plant stressed? Is the light too low? Is the soil too wet? Fixing those deeper imbalances will do more than any spray ever could. Because the truth is, a healthy Sansevieria is almost impenetrable. It doesn't just survive, it defends itself. And that, in many ways, mirrors the kind of resilience we all hope to build: quiet, internal, and strong enough that trouble has no place to take hold. In our next chapter, we'll explore one of the most surprising parts of the Sansevieria's life: flowering. It's rare, a little mysterious, and not always as lovely as you might expect, but it says something powerful about timing, energy, and when to let go. 10. When it blooms, should you let it? It may come as a surprise to many. But yes, Sansevieria can bloom. It's rare, often unexpected, and when it happens, it feels almost magical. One day, you walk past your plant, the same one you've seen 100 times, and there it is, a tall, slender stalk emerging from the center, dotted with clusters of tiny greenish-white flowers. It feels like a reward, like your plant is saying, "Thank you, I'm thriving, I trust you." But before you celebrate, let's pause, because the truth about Sansevieria flowers is a bit more complex. First, the flowers themselves are subtle. They're not bold or flashy, like orchids or peace lilies. They have a delicate beauty, but they're easy to miss. And with them comes a sticky, sweet-scented nectar that can drip onto nearby surfaces. If you're not expecting it, you might find a curious little mess on your windowsill or shelf. And second, perhaps more important, is what the bloom means for your plant. You see, blooming is an energy-intensive process. For Sansevieria, it's almost a last hurrah, not in a dramatic sense, but in a biological one. Flowering often signals maturity, even stress. The plant is putting everything it has into reproduction. It's using its reserves, drawing nutrients away from its leaves, focusing all its power on this tall, slender statement of survival. That's why, in many cases, plant experts recommend cutting the flower off at the base when it appears. Not because it's harmful in itself, but because it drains energy from the parts of the plant that matter most. The leaves, the roots, the future growth. If you leave the flower, the plant may appear tired afterward, pale, thinner. It's as if it gave everything and left little for what comes next. And that brings us to a gentle lesson. Sometimes in life, things bloom not because everything is perfect, but because something deep inside knows it's time to release, to express, to let go. You can choose to let your Sansevieria bloom. Watch it, admire it, let it teach you, but don't be afraid to cut it away either. It's not cruel, it's care. A redirection of energy back to what will sustain the plant for the long haul. Because in the end, Sansevieria isn't meant to impress, it's meant to endure. And speaking of endurance, in our next section, we'll explore what long-term growth really looks like, how your plant multiplies, expands, and becomes a thriving green companion that grows alongside you. 11. Long-term growth, from pot to jungle. If you've cared for your Sansevieria this far, if you've listened, adjusted, and trusted the slow pace of its nature, then something beautiful is about to happen. Not overnight, not loudly, but steadily, beneath the surface, where all lasting growth begins. One day, you'll notice it, a small spear of green, breaking through the soil beside the older leaves. A baby shoot, a quiet beginning, and that's when you'll realize, your plant isn't just surviving, it's expanding. Sansevieria grows by sending out rhizomes, underground stems that push outward, searching for space, light, life. From these rhizomes come new shoots, each one a promise of what's to come. The single plant you brought home has begun to build a family. A little forest in a pot. And just like that, what once stood as one proud stalk becomes a cluster, a community of leaves standing shoulder to shoulder. With time, that cluster thickens, the pot begins to bulge, roots press against the sides, shoots lean outward, asking for more room. This is your invitation, to repot, to expand, to divide, to share. You might choose to give it a larger home, something wider, with just a bit more space to stretch. Or you might divide the plant, separating the babies from the parent, giving each one its own place to grow. It's a moment of generosity, not just to your plant, but to yourself, and maybe even to others. Many gardeners find this moment sacred, giving a rooted piece of your own plant to a friend, a neighbor, a child, a living gift that carries not just green leaves, but the memory of care. And what's more, this kind of growth is a quiet reflection of your own journey. You started with curiosity, a little nervousness, maybe a hope to keep something alive. And now, you're not just growing a plant. You're cultivating trust, rhythm, and skill. You're seeing how patience becomes abundance. Over time, your Sansevieria may outgrow pot after pot. It might become a fixture in your home, a green anchor in the corner of a room. Or it might multiply into several smaller pots throughout your space. However it unfolds, know this. The growth never stops. Not for the plant, not for you. And as your hands continue to care for this living sculpture, part of you changes too. You begin to feel rooted, calm, capable. Next, we'll draw this journey to a close. But not with a list or a checklist. With a reminder of everything this humble plant has shown us along the way. Closing reflections. The plant that grows with you. So here we are, full circle. From that first moment in the shop or nursery, to choosing the right pot, the right soil, the right light, from cautious watering to quiet wiping, from spotting the first signs of trouble to witnessing the magic of a baby shoot. You've walked beside this plant not just as a caretaker, but as a student, and whether you realized it or not, the Sansevieria has been teaching you all along. It taught you that resilience isn't loud, that survival doesn't have to be dramatic, that sometimes the strongest thing in the room is the one that speaks the least, but stands tall. Anyway, it reminded you to rest between growth, to wait, to breathe, to trust in the cycle of things. It showed you that beauty can come from simplicity, That strength can come from restraint. And that thriving, true, deep, enduring thriving, comes from choosing what to let in and what to let go. Maybe that's why so many people feel unexpectedly connected to this plant. Because in caring for it, we begin to care for parts of ourselves we may have forgotten. The part that craves stillness. The part that blooms without noise. The part that endures, even in seasons of scarcity. Your Sansevieria might not flower every year. It might not grow quickly. It might not catch the spotlight in a room full of tropical drama. But it will stay, and that alone is something rare. So wherever your plant sits, in the corner of a room, beside your bed, next to your favorite chair, let it remind you. You don't have to rush. You don't have to do everything right. You just have to show up, pay attention, and stay rooted in what matters. Thank you for joining me on this journey here on Earthly Delights. If you've found this story meaningful, if it's helped you see your plant, or even yourself, in a new way, consider subscribing. We have so many more green companions to meet, so many more lessons tucked quietly into leaves and soil. And until next time, may your roots grow deep, your light stay gentle, and your journey, like your Sansevieria, continue to unfold in quiet, powerful ways.